Well, welcome to the Jorie podcast. Today's subject is compliance and why it's important. Today we have Zach Gardner, compliance officer, and Derick Magante, security officer. Zach has been with Jorie over 7 years in operations, managing client account management, and now compliance. And Derick started in marketing and then involved into in-house tech, which means when stuff breaks, his cell goes off, and now works on security awareness. My name is Grant, and I'm your host. Good to see you, gentlemen. Sal isn't here today, so we get to have some fun. So, security is a huge issue, especially in healthcare with HIPAA and all the other regulations. So, here we go. Why is compliance essential for healthcare technology startups? And how does it impact the company's ability to scale and grow?
Well,
Woohoo!
yeah, you want me
Thank you,
to?
Grant. I appreciate that intro. Appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thank you, Zach, for coming on. I was here last week. Like Grant said, Sal's not here, so happy Friday, everyone. We're gonna get this kicked off. So excited to be here. So again,
good.
Yeah, as am I. And I know I wasn't here last week, but I think I'm a special guest. Grant, I know you asked about why compliance is so essential for a healthcare startup. Um, the reason being, it affects the number of clients you can get, and what I mean by that is larger hospitals, health systems, they will have you go through a rigorous security assessment. And most of the time, without having something like a SOC 2 Type 2 or a high trust, it'll lengthen the process quite a bit. And it's also very hard to show how you're adhering to those guidelines without having a third party audit. Um, Furthermore, I would say it also has implications on getting investors. Once you have something like a SOC 2 Type 2 high trust or a SOC 1 Type 1, a SOC 1 Type 2, it makes it easier for those investors to have confidence you're following the proper business controls, financial controls, and cybersecurity controls that you need to in order to protect patient data, provide a good product to your clients, and give them the uh, you know, in, integrity reporting that is crucial to them running their operations.
So, Zach, I'm going to interrupt for a second. I know nothing about what you just said, so I have both socks on, and you said about having socks on sometimes. Tell me what that is, or will these people know that?
They most likely will, but I can give a
Okay.
little bit of a general overview. So SOC 1 Type 2, that will go through like a general business process, right? So how do you onboard clients and what controls do you have in place to make sure every client you onboard goes through the same steps? And once they're onboarded, um, whatever service you're providing to them, how do you make sure that what you're providing is what they're expecting? In addition to that, how do you audit it? And how can somebody else audit and review that? You say you follow XYZ. Are you actually following XYZ?
Got
Um,
it.
SOC 2 Type 2 goes into more so cybersecurity related events or controls. That goes from like getting into a building, right? How do you make sure a random person just can't walk in and see all of your patient data,
Okay.
right? And you'll have a ton of controls that overlay into it, not only from a physical security perspective, but from all the fun backdoor perspective. For example, um, maybe you're not familiar with this, Grant, but like logging into a computer or logging into a website, sometimes they require two-factor authentication where
Right.
you're not only using a password, but you're using something that you hold on to like a cell phone to then say, yes, I approve this access.
Right.
That's
Right.
a huge improvement in security over the past, 10, 15 years. And something we see a lot of portals and EMRs moving to.
Cool. So, as that dovetails into my next question, I think, what are some of the common compliance regulations that healthcare tech startups must adhere to? And then, how do you ensure that your company, if this startup, meets those requirements or met those requirements?
Absolutely. Derek, you want me to take this one again?
yeah. Go ahead.
All
This is
right.
this is your realm, man. This is
Yeah.
your realm. I'm just
Derek's
I'm
just
just
here
a
for
guy
the
on the
good
side.
looks on the
Yeah.
set. That's all it
Yeah,
is.
he is.
No, I'll
And
add
that
my two
scruffy
cents.
beard. Yeah, so the main one you have to follow in the US is HIPAA, and that sounds like it's easy just because it's one body of regulation you have to follow, but it encompasses a ton of different patient data security, privacy, and breach rules you have to follow. If you're handling, European patient data, that follows something else called GDPR. We typically we don't adhere to that, or I don't want to say adhere. We don't have to worry about that. We're not dealing with any European data at the moment. So mainly for us, it's HIPAA, and there's a couple different ways you can do that. You can either do self-assessments, where you go through all of the HIPAA related controls for privacy, security, and breaches, and you self-assess if you're following them. That works for, I would say, smaller physicians or
Hmm.
health system or hospitals. Actually, I wouldn't even say hospitals there. Works mostly for the smaller physicians who can't afford to have a third party come in and audit, because that's an extensive cost. It can tens of thousands of dollars it can incur, right? How we've been able to ensure we do it, we have a third party come in, do a security risk assessment on us, and then on top of that, we do um, periodic reviews of our internal controls, and that's led by my team in compliance, making sure our other business departments are following what they need to, and then we make remediations if we find something. Maybe we weren't doing it perfectly. We can improve upon it. That's most of the things we find. Um, in addition to that, like for our technology specifically, they go over rigorous testing, rigorous security requirements. We implement, encryption, secure APIs, and like role-based user access. For example, Grant, you come on as a marketing, let's say, right, individual. You're not going to see anything that our technology team sees. Two
Got it.
different roles, you don't need to see it. Um, yeah, but that's
Yeah, and I
that's
did
some.
also want to add to that too. As far as employees go, we do have mandatory HIPAA training,
That too as well.
annual HIPAA training that we have for all employees that we do on an annual basis. So
And
that's
Okay.
then, yeah, to add to that, we do it. We also you send out monthly reminders
yeah,
on security best practices,
yes, I
um,
do.
and we're always looking to improve that. Whether it be, you know, one thing that I think we've seen internally here is more reminders aren't always the best, because like they kind
Hmm.
of get drawn out.
Right.
You just see it come in every day. So we try to make it a balance between,
Hmm.
what we found is really effective is like a monthly reminder, and then which goes over like a standard set of, hey, just make sure you're doing these things, right?
Hmm.
And then every once in a while we'll send out an event based driven reminder where, uh, like, let's say we see in the news today, um, I'll just say like Aetna Insurance Company, let's say they had like a HIPAA breach. We'll take and review that, um, and push it out to our employees here in the US and offshore, like, hey, this happened with Aetna. Make sure that we don't do XYZ, or this is what you can learn from it. um
Hmm.
yeah.
Hmm.
Starts with don't click on that link.
Yeah,
That starts right.
right, right,
It
right.
does indeed.
So you're developing new healthcare technologies, and Jorie's all over this. So how do you strike a balance between innovation and then regulatory compliance when you develop this stuff?
Yeah, I would say I wish it was easy to do that,
Hmm.
Yeah.
but it's not. It's definitely a balance. And one thing we've done really good here is, our development process involves a close collaboration with our compliance experts. And typically, everything we do, it's conducted in a testing environment before we push it out to production. So that means it has to go through certain checkpoints, like specifically for technology, a code review, a security review. Once we do all that, and then we review the output, that it measures up with our quality standards, we're able to push it into production. That allows us to make sure we're following all the regulations we need to before we start, working with real data that has real
Okay.
implications, if that makes sense.
Good. That makes sense. Perfect sense. Yeah. So share some experiences where prioritizing security from the beginning helped your company avoid a potential risk or pitfall.
Sure. I can point to that mostly, that we haven't had a data breach or any cybersecurity related breach, so far, and I would like to keep it that way. That's because, since the beginning we have prioritized security and compliance. Um, Mainly, this speaks to security though, where we do rigorous biannual penetration testing, and then
Mm-hmm.
ongoing periodic. Uh, we have ethical hackers come in, um, specifically government certified ethical hackers that come in and try and exploit our network. What's great about that is typically they're ahead of the curve, whereas not to say the pen testers aren't, they test more of just generally what's out there, right? It's an automated test, whereas these ethical hackers can probably they can assess it a little bit further, maybe find a couple different vulnerabilities, and then we remediate it and stay ahead of the curve there. Um,
Mm-hmm. Both
yeah,
internal and external.
yeah,
You
both
know,
internal and external.
just wanted to add that, penetrating from the outside of our network or within, we have both locked down. So
So
that's
you got
vital.
hired that Hugh Jackman character from Swordfish that did all the typing to break your system. Is that kind of what?
Exactly, exactly,
You
exactly.
That was
got
a
it.
weird scene. So, when I get on these sites, it's a new site to log in. It says something about you want to use your Google login or Facebook login or this login, or do you want your own email? It's like sometimes, okay, I use Google and supposedly they're better. How do I know that's secure?
Um, you know, how do you know you're asking how do you know if you're using your Google stored
Yeah, how
passwords are
is that
secured?
more secure than using my email and something else I made up? I mean, it seems like they're really pushing that on different logins and stuff. This has nothing to do with Jory. This is
Sure.
just my own curiosity.
I would say it's more secure because if you don't have to remember, so you having to remember a password, right? That makes it's a limitation in itself. You can only remember so many different characters. And
Right.
once you get into the like 15 plus and special characters and all those different parameters they set forth now, you're probably going to be writing it down somewhere. That exposes you to if somebody is around you, they could easily take that, find out your password, right? If you use a Google, like they call it strong passwords now, or like your Apple iCloud does the same thing. They'll store it encrypted AES 256. That means it's most likely going to take. Uh, so two things: when you store it encrypted like that, it's going to take somebody 50 years, 75 years to break that encryption, or even more. Right? By that time, you've probably changed your password. So
One hopes,
it's
or I'm
almost
dead.
or you're dead. Yeah. So most likely it's impossible for them to break it. That's the whole point of making it that robust. Um, The other thing, what I brought up earlier, is multi-factor authentication. That
Right.
really makes it hard. Even if they guess your password, now they have to get access to your phone. What are the
Right.
chances that they get both? And if they do, I mean, you've done all you can at that point.
Good point. Good point. Well, thank you guys. So, what role does data security play in the healthcare technology industry? And how do you ensure then that all this patient information is protected at all times?
Of course. I would say this is a hot topic every day. I mean, anytime you get on with especially as the clients get bigger, right? They have to follow more and more robust security controls. That's something that HIPAA outlines. So when you look at the guidelines of like if you were to look at it as an outsider, you'd probably look at them and be like, these are pretty general. Well, that was by design because you're going to have small physician groups who their security exposure is not as big as a hospital who deals with hundreds of thousands of patients coming through a month or a year, right? They have a lot more data to protect. Um, Now, how we make sure we protect their data when we're handling it, we implement multi layered security measures to protect that data. This includes encryption of data at rest, in transit, role based security, continuous monitoring for potential threats. What we've done internally, we implement different softwares that can automatically log and monitor those logs of where data is going and by who. So it'll alert somebody out um, if they think it's kind of suspicious, right? And then we have our own incident response team that goes and looks at that, make sure that, okay, that was valid. Or if it wasn't, then you got to shut it down and go through your incident response protocols.
Got
I'll kind
it.
of,
Interesting.
yeah, I'll let Derek talk a little bit about this. This also goes back to our security trainings that we do.
Mhm,
It's imperative while you have before an employee even starts, they go through security training, and then the ongoing security training as well.
mhm. And as far as the security awareness, we do little things such as never share password, tips like that on your routine, right? You should never uh, when you leave your desk, you should turn off your monitor, just so that you're not sharing PHI to other employees or somebody that might happen to walk by, right? And then another security feature that we have is just security as far as in guests even coming
Mm-hmm.
into the office, right? We have security badges that are they're monitored, and personnel is always following them everywhere they go, and you know, um, checks like that. We have, and especially we I don't know if we mentioned that we're PCI as well.
Oh yeah, well, I don't think we mentioned that.
Yeah,
That's a whole different.
that's a whole
Where
different.
that's getting into payment
Yeah,
processing, but
but
Right. Yeah.
um,
Right.
yeah, so that particular area is isolated, but it's definitely secure. So yeah.
So, I feel like every day you look at the news or the paper or something, and there's some new healthcare law or something that, Congress is talking about. You don't know if it passes or not, or if it's even a law or regulation. So, do you have a strategy for to try to stay up with that? I mean, is there like a report that comes out to make sure that you guys do this and that, or how does that work?
yeah, so that's an ongoing and dynamic process there. What helps a lot is going through like seminars or attending conferences. That's one way to get that information, and then staying up to date with certain government agencies. They'll send out newsletters when something new comes up, to your point, right? So you don't have to sit there watching the news finding what new law went out. You sign up for newsletters, seminars, and engaging with regulatory bodies to make sure you're getting those updates. Derek, am I missing anything?
I think
I don't
you.
think so.
Yeah, no, I think you got it.
So I mean, it's not a simple process, but it's a relatively simple process. I mean, you don't have to go look 75 different places. You know where to go. It may be difficult to comply, but it's fairly simple to stay up with it.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it's simple. You how do I put this? Like over time, you're able to develop a more robust kind of database of where you're getting your information, right?
Okay.
And the m- I would say over time it gets easier.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
because
I know from companies I've started, investor confidence is a huge thing. I don't care what the company is or what they're doing. So in healthcare, challenging tech startups, what do they face when it comes to funding? And then how strong a focus on compliance and security is it? And will it enhance investor confidence and all that?
Uh,
yeah, yeah, most definitely. Because then people that are investors that are putting their money towards a company that doesn't have security checks, they won't feel as confident to utilize their services, right? Because we've been validated by outside firms, auditors. We go through rigorous testing of our networks and whatnot, and they could rest assured that their money is going towards something that's validated. So
And I'd just like to add to that. I brought up this audit earlier, but the SOC 1 Type 2 audit goes through things that are not, it encompasses some security controls that overlay with our SOC 2, but it also goes into your business controls. So, from like an investor standpoint, right, you want to make sure that your company you're investing in, most likely, you don't want them to have a lawsuit related to anything, um, especially within the healthcare sector, like getting a data breach, right? That could shut either the company down or seriously prevent you from getting extra clients. Where the SOC 1 comes in is that's the other part of it, or part of the other part, where it's your business processes, how you invoice, making sure that's ethical and integrity checked. In addition to that, like your quality parameters. Um,
Okay.
yeah, so that gives the investors the confidence you're following and can deliver on what they're asking.
So do you guys feel like within all this stuff that you're ever ahead of the curve? Like you're even like steps ahead of where security is requiring you to be?
Absolutely. And that speaks to us not having any data breaches.
There you go.
The 7 years plus that we've been in business. Um, I don't know what more to say other than that.
Well,
Yeah.
that's pretty good proof. So, the sending out emails, I don't know, and all this stuff. So, how do you foster a culture of compliance and then security awareness so that everybody's thinking about it, not just you guys sending stuff out?
I'd say it starts from the top down. I mean, if your leaders not so you take Derek and I out of the picture, right? You look at our operational leaders. If they're not on board with whatever compliance or security controls or awareness you're providing, how is their team gonna, follow? Like they follow their leaders, right? So having our leaders on board, which thankfully they have been, and they're actually the ones pushing for more and more compliance and security awareness training and controls. You can't ask for anything more than that. Um, that's all I would say. I mean, I'm sure there's more to it. Maybe Derek wants to add something, but
Mhm.
that's my most important part.
Mhm. Um, no, I think you said it right on, spot on. Because as a company, we take security very seriously, right? And like what Zach said, it starts from the top on, and if everybody's on board, which they have been, because we haven't had any reports of anything. It shows that we're all as a team, as a network, getting things done uh,
Yeah.
correctly. So.
Okay. Over the years, I've started a whole bunch of companies. I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and there's so much it seems anymore to getting the ball rolling. If you get financing, you find investors, you get your stuff together, you executive summaries and business plans and all this stuff, and you get your stuff, and then you want to be a healthcare startup tech company, right? So, what are best practices for entrepreneurs looking at this space? What do they need to prioritize as far as compliance and security? How do they get there fastest?
Fastest, I would say, I wouldn't even be
How's
worried
that?
about. I wouldn't even be worried about fastest. I would be worried about doing it right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Hmm.
if you don't do it right the first time, it's only going to slow it down. Uh, it's
Right.
only going to get worse and worse, right? You think about
Right.
like uh, let's say a mud ball rolling down a hill. It's only going to pick up more mud as it goes, and eventually it's going to get a little bit out of control.
Hmm.
Um, That'll be the first thing. There are a ton of audit firms out there that you can go to have
Hmm.
experience within, setting up, whether it be health tech or if you're just trying to get into, uh, let's say just healthcare in general. Like
Hmm.
maybe you just want to, maybe coding, right, and you want to stand up your own coding practice where physicians can come to you and say, "Do all my coding for me." Um, I'd still strongly suggest getting some consultant in. That will be a faster way because, again, they know everything most of the time what you need to do. I will say just don't follow them blindly. Not that they're going to intentionally give you bad or outdated information. Just always do your own checks is
Hmm.
something I would end with.
Hmm. And there's for instance, for HIPAA, right? If you're a clinic that needs there's HIPAA checklists out there, as far as if you're meeting the required uh, you know requirements for HIPAA. Even SOC, I think they even have a checklist, a self assessment is what they call it, a self assessment where you just go down at the list to see, hey, do I have security? Do I have this locked in place? If you don't, then that could probably be an indication that you're far from where you need to be, right? So you wouldn't want to waste any time from an auditor, and you need to just fix those certain checks before you do so. So.
I mean, it kind of sounds like common sense when you've said it.
Hmm.
It's like, well, ask people that know better and then go buy the recipe from the cook that already knows how to make the cake, kind of is
Hmm.
what you just said. And
Hmm.
it's simple, but I
Hmm.
could see where you.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, how about some potential consequences for healthcare startups that neglect the compliance? That's not a big deal, right? But how can these risks be mitigated?
Derek, want me to take this one again?
Yeah.
All righty.
Go ahead, Yoshi.
You know,
Go ahead.
so I'll speak this in two parts, right? Neglecting the compliance and security. Could you get by without anybody noticing? Sure, right? We live in a big world here. Are you going to get by for long? I'd bet against that for sure. And the risks are, I would say, probably different than other industries, uh, mainly because you're dealing with federal laws here. And if you, as a startup, have a HIPAA breach, I don't know any investor that would
Mhm.
come in and say, "Yeah, oh, I'm fine with that. Let's continue down this path." Or furthermore, it's going to make getting clients extremely hard. Maybe not the smaller physician groups, right? They may not have the time to do as much due diligence, but if you're trying to get a hospital, one of the first things they're going to ask, or it will definitely be included in their security questionnaire, is have you had a breach recently and how did you mitigate it from happening again? How long ago was it? Who did it affect? If it's recent, I doubt they bring you on, to be honest.
Sure.
To mitigate these, you can do some of the things we've talked about, right? Um, Incorporating security measures at every stage, whether you're health tech or just in healthcare. I would set your company up to be a security and compliance focused first. Um, in addition to that, engaging compliance experts, conducting regularly security audits, um, and making sure your leaders understand like that is first and foremost. Again, you can't just have one department forcing things down uh, really anywhere. Like you need to have the buy-in across the company.
Mhm. I agree.
Kind of talked about all that stuff falling through and all that stuff. That's good stuff. So, if you're a third party vendor, or in your case, hiring or using or whatever, for our audience, how do you navigate the complex landscape of third party vendors and partners and maintain a high level of security and compliance?
So I think we may be repeating ourselves a little bit here on my answers, but I guess it speaks to how important it is, right? Going through regular security audits or assessing your potential partner security and compliance practices, ensuring that they align with your standards or our standards, um, and also establishing clear contractual agreements, right? We haven't talked about this yet, but having BAAs in place is huge, and adhering to those BAAs. That's a business associate agreement, by the way, for those who don't know. Um, and what those basically do is they govern, you know, what tasks you're going to do, how you're going to handle them, what data you're going to handle, and you know, I guess I would say a plethora of other things. Um, in addition to that, I'd make sure you're prepared to go through any, you know, regular audits and security assessments by your partners, and maintaining open lines of communication with them uh, is essential. Making sure that they're, you know, apprised of really any situation happening is huge.
Okay. Anything else, Derek?
No, nothing here to
All right, man.
add.
So, as healthcare tech, as the industry continues to evolve, then how do you see compliance and security requirements changing, if at all? And how do you think you'll adapt?
I'll answer that kind of starting at the end, right? We'll adapt by I would continuing what we're doing, right? We try to take a proactive approach as best we can, having these government, um, you know, ethical hackers in here, and then subscribing to, you know, whether it be newsletters or going to seminars. For example, like upcoming Black Hat conferences are huge to stay ahead of the curve. Um, and what was the first part of the question again? Sorry, Grant. I think I lost my train of thought there. Oh, you're. I, I think you're on mute. I can't hear you.
Is that better?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
there we go.
Yeah, I had to cough and I thought I turned it back on. My apology.
It's all good.
Um, how the industry, when it evolves, how you see compliance and security requirements changing, if at all.
Yeah, I mean, the way I see them changing, they're going to get more rigorous. You know, you see that with really, if you look back like 10, 15 years ago, where the security requirements were, and you look to today, when now I would say a lot of organizations are pushing for high trust. That's one. So, high trust is a comprehensive framework that will incorporate cybersecurity practices from different types of framework, like NIST, for example, right? And it'll have a ton of other controls in place where, so to give you an example, you look at a SOC 2 type 2, which I've mentioned earlier, that can have anywhere from like 90 to 120 controls, obviously more than that too. Um, High trust, on the other hand, bare minimum, if you're going through an R2 assessment, like 300 controls. So you can see how much more comprehensive that is. I see any larger health system or hospital moving toward that, and that just makes it a little bit harder for startups to begin. But once you're in the door, with that, you really have a large breadth of clients to you can reach to.
Okay. What are the most significant changes, or I'm sorry, challenges you faced when ensuring your products and services complied with international regulations? Because you guys are everywhere. How did you address them?
Yeah, I would. It speaks back to our process on before we implement a new product uh, or a new design solution, whatever it may be. We consult with our internal experts first, and if they, don't believe that they can handle it, we'll go outside and consult with them. But it's all about putting the compliance and security first in the process before you don't want to start something and then kind of take a step back and be like, oh, we missed this part, right? That's why we put it before we sort of even start with the testing. Uh, we go back and say, okay, what do we need to follow? Make sure those are in place first. Then we start flying. Now that does, people can see that as delaying their delivery,
Okay.
um, which I mean, you sort of are, but you look at it from a long term perspective. We're also ensuring that we don't get hit with a fine
Mhm.
or we break a rule or a law. We're making sure down the line it doesn't get stopped, where we can really scale up and continue to grow.
Let me see. How does a focus on compliance and security impact customer trust and satisfaction, trust and satisfaction in the healthcare technology sector?
Not only does it impact it, but it's instrumental in building any type of long lasting relationship,
Mhm.
gaining their customer trust and satisfaction. You're entrusted with uh, dealing with thousands or hundreds of thousands of sensitive data from patients, and compliance demonstrates our commitment to safeguarding that data. When clients see that we meet or exceed the regulatory requirements, it enhances their confidence in our ability to protect uh, any data from a breach. Let's say worst case scenario, there was one. We're well trained on how to mitigate it from spreading and reporting it to whether it be our client or the regulatory bodies we need to. Um, this trust translates directly into enhanced customer satisfaction. Not only do they feel they're reassured by their data, um, but they can then focus more on not only the patient but also improving the current processes, right? When you don't have to worry because you know how someone else has it handled about the compliance and security, you can focus more on. I don't want to say the things that matter, but when you're dealing with patients, I would say their health is of the utmost importance,
Right.
along with
Prioritize.
their
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
hmm
So, how about some success stories where dedication to compliance and security gave Jorie a competitive advantage in the market?
Derek, do you want to maybe
Yeah,
maybe take this one?
let me handle this one. No, so some success stories. A lot of our clients that we're privileged to have wouldn't even be clients if we never had some of these certifications, right? Whether it be the SOC, the PCI, HIPAA. So that's what I would say is our dedication to the compliance and security is where it makes us where we are today. As a compliance and security centric company. Did you want to add in?
Anything specific you could let us in on without breaching all the stuff we've just talked about?
So Derek, did you talk about how sorry if I missed this, but like how we're able to get larger clients? We don't maybe need to name them, but
Yeah. No, you could say that, but I didn't mention that. I just said certain clients that we've
Yeah,
been privileged enough to.
sure. Yeah, we don't need to necessarily mention them, but
Hmm.
one way it's helped us is I personally don't think you can really even get into a larger hospital or health system. And when I say larger, we're talking, I would say 500 million or $1 billion a year. They have some security assessments. Like I've seen them fill them out myself. They go over 300, 400 different questions.
Wow.
Um, if you're not having these checks and balances in place beforehand, I don't know. I'd say it's lucky if you get through that and are able to, pass their own like the hospital security requirements.
Sure, sure.
Yeah,
So, look into the future. What's the aspirations for your healthcare tech? How will compliance and security remain integral in your growth strategy? This is kind of the ending basket question. Say anything you want to answer here that kind of fits in that we didn't get to.
sure. Um, I can't speak for everybody, but I see where our what our leadership tells us or directives they give. It's going to be central to our growth strategy. As I alluded to earlier, right? I believe everybody's going to be going to high trust, especially the by what I mean by going to high trust is they probably won't even take you if you're not high trust certified as a larger hospital, let's say in the next 5, 10 years, or it might be even sooner than that. So we're gonna, work closely to maintain that, especially with any regulatory bodies, industry organizations, so we can stay ahead of those emerging compliance requirements. And our R&D efforts also prioritize security first design principles, like I mentioned earlier. Before we really go into, we just don't jump headfirst into designing a product. We take a step back before we do that and look at what security and compliance requirements do we need to fulfill and design our product around that. Um, and I guess by doing all of that, ingraining it into our culture and business strategy, where I'd say we aim to be the go-to choice for healthcare organizations seeking any type of RCM innovation, especially related to RCM automation in the future.
Hmm.
Derek, any wrap up from you?
Yeah, with everything that we've gone through, all these certifications and SOC, it's a rigorous, it's very rigorous, right? With all these controls and getting certain team, evidence from different departments and whatnot, and with Zach's leadership, kudos to him with getting everything in check in line for us, and so I see how hard our company worked to get to this point, and next level is high trust, right? And that's a huge monster in itself, and the aspiration is just seeing us get through all this and doing it is what's amazing. What's amazing, dedication to hard work and everything like that, and taking it seriously at the end of the day, and just trying to get to our goals, is what I wanted to say.
Cool. I'm assuming that high trust is an acronym for something, or is that a new policy or requirement that's come out?
Yeah, I wouldn't say new, Grant. It's it's been out for I want to say a little bit over a decade now.
Okay.
Um, it's just getting more and more. Before it was like only the largest organizations were uh, going through that assessment, right? Whereas now it's trickling down to not just larger organizations, medium sized, smaller size, and it's only going to get more and more as the norm, I would say. Um, where like SOC 2 is now. Any client you go to, first thing they ask, do you have SOC 2 type 2? I think they're going to start asking, do you have high trust? We see it, but it's not necessarily like if you don't have it, they're still going to let you go through their assessment. Um, did that answer your question? Oh,
Yeah, I think so. I'd never heard the term before. Not that that means much. I'm not in that industry, but just to make sure that people understood that it's something that's coming, and like you said, it's not new, so it should be known and all that kind of stuff.
yeah, yeah, it's here. It stands for, I think that's what you're asking, like if it's an acronym, it's the Health Information Trust Alliance. Um, And I would just like to, end with one more point. The high trust certification is different than SOC 2 Type 2. The main differentiator is that instead of getting the outside audit firm to give an opinion on your controls, um, the high trust is it's not an opinion. It's are you meeting these or not? And there's
Okay.
a clear uh, checklist and weighted averages that you go through. Um, and it's completely governed by high trust. So it just adds
Got it.
another level of security.
Gentlemen, anything in the security and climate compliance arena that we didn't touch on that you just got to talk about?
I think we went through almost
Yeah.
I think I might lose my voice if I keep talking here, Grant.
I think Derick answered 2 questions. I mean, that was fair, right?
Yeah, that's fair, right? I'm a man of many
Well, guys,
words. A man of many
there
words,
you
Grant. So
you don't need many words. That's all that when you speak, we know that it's the truth. Hey, guys, thank you for this. It's been fascinating for me, especially sitting on the outside, knowing that Jorie is protecting even ahead of some of the requirements and stuff, and on it with their software and all these huge systems and stuff like that. So this has been really interesting for me to learn all this. Thank you, and I hope everybody tunes in for the next episode and watch our website and all that kind of stuff for news when that's up. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
thanks.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.